That's right, community. It's time for AppSec Now, a DevCentral podcast focused on the latest threats and happenings in the application security world. We'll be featuring custom curated content from F5's Security Incident Response Team and relevant data from F5 Labs to keep you up to date on the absolute latest in AppSec now.
Hey everybody, welcome to this installation of AppSec Now. I am Chase, your host for today, while Aubrey is out screwing off somewhere else. I have Malcolm on with us, a principal researcher at F5 Labs. Hi, Malcolm. And I got the illustrious Megazone here to swoon us with his dulcet tones, principal security engineer on the CERT team. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about Apache Camels. We got some Typhoons. We got some government backdoor requests. And we got a little bonus about some DDoS stuff on X. So let's kick it off with Apache Camel, remote code execution fun. Megazone?
Sure. Yeah, so it's been a little over a week now because this was last week's security. But so about a week and a half ago, I guess, we started to see panic, really, is the best word I can put to it. People coming in, customers coming into us at F5. There's this hearing about this world-ending RCE in Apache Camel. That what can F5 do for us? And we're like, we have no more information than you do at that point, right? There was nothing out. It was all rumors swirling around that there was this really, basically created a world-ending critical vulnerability that anybody running Apache Camel was going to get owned, and it kind of built up over a couple of days towards the end of that week. And by that Friday, we had, I don't know, maybe a dozen different cases or more. At least it was just starting to build up, and the pace was picking up.
These are incidents coming into F5?
Yeah, they're coming into F5. Okay. I mean, it's just F5 customers who were hearing through their whatever grapevines they're part of that there was this pending world-ending thing, and trying to get in front of it. But of course, no one could get in front of it because they didn't know where to stand. It was like it's something. There's something wrong with Apache Camel. How do I fix it? Well, what's wrong with it? I don't know, but fix it. And so it really, we have people here. It spun a lot of people up, and there's a lot of customer sites. I know, a lot of our customers, and I'm sure a lot of other people I've seen. Lots of reporting out there about this at the time. The days that followed. Lots of other companies stood up their security teams. You were hearing from people who were like, the entire security team was like, couldn't, working through the weekend, they're on red alert for this Camel thing, but they're basically standing around because their management has basically said you have to be ready, but they don't know what to be ready for or what to do. So you're kind of standing around waiting for news. And on our end too, we had people spun up. We worked our team, not myself, people on the CERT and people on PE, people from our Tel Aviv team who handle our web application firewall rules. Basically ended up working through the weekend. And at first, there was a lot of just trying to find information, looking at dark web, looking at other things, looking for, there's rumors out there. And the problem was at first there were rumors, plural. And so people were like, I think it's this. I think I've heard the attack is that. And it turned out in the end, of course, a lot of what was in those initial panic days was erroneous. Like there was just bad information. People either speculating or people even making it up just for the lulls of I'll start a rumor that it's this kind of exploit, right? Just to see who jumps, because you almost always see that kind of crap.
And this was a medium CVE too when it was.
And that's the thing. It all came out in the wash Sunday morning, I think, Eastern U.S. time. Things finally, official word came out. The Apache group, from what I saw in the CVEs, they don't actually put a CVSS on their CVEs, but the industry in general started scoring it once the details are out. Yeah, and they got scored. I think it was like a 6.8. It was 6.5, 6.8. It was a medium, CVSS 3.1, and it turns out to be very narrow in scope. Like, is it risky if you have Camel with a specific configuration? Is there some risk? Yes. It's not a world-ending RCE. It's not like if you have Camel anywhere near your system, you're immediately going to fall over. It was a reasonably scoped CVE. This is, the big takeaway for me on this is this is the problem with running around coordinated disclosure and starting rumors. And there's a lot of these private, like in quotes, security chat forums between different agencies. I know a lot of financial institutions, there's backroom chats and stuff between groups. You end up with this Chicken Little thing happening where somebody hears a rumor about something that they kind of heard there's something coming, and it gets spun up and wastes, the best part, wastes a lot of time and resources. There was a lot of cost to industry over what turned out to be not one big deal. And you might say, okay, well, it's not to happen, but this happens. This isn't the only example. This is something that happens again and again, where something comes out, there's a rumor, everybody panics. And in most cases, because you don't see criticals constantly, it's not like this. In most cases, these things that are world-ending RCEs end up not being.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like let's think about what a world-ending RCE actually looks like, right? Like Log4Shell or Shell Shock or something like that, right? It's on a commonly used platform. It's kind of universally applicable. It's very simple to execute. It doesn't require any auth, right? And from what I understand, Apache Camel is not the most broadly deployed platform in the world, right?
No.
Nor is this particular bug. Even when people were just starting to get the merest inklings about sort of what it was, it didn't sound like it was tremendously easy. It's it wasn't like literally like just append your shell command to this parameter, right, or whatever. So. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me couldn't people have sort of thought this through a little bit a priori and said, well, the conditions aren't correct for this being the next shell shock, right?
And I wonder, is that part of the problem is the security people that are having to respond because you have a management team coming to them with that urgency, but where's that management team getting that information? Are there those Chicken Little people, the sky is falling? Are they making money off this? Are they consulting, or is it just kind of the knee-jerk reaction? There's just that nervousness in the security.
Well, I can kind of see it. I mean, like if you heard through your back, your contacts or whatever, that something big was coming down the pike, you don't want to be the one CISO who didn't prepare, right? That makes sense to me. But as Megazone was pointing out, there is actually a pretty huge cost to it. Which I guess if that's what they want to do, they can, but it was kind of a huge waste of everyone's time. Maybe better. Maybe it would be better, instead of being that reactive, have your procedures and processes in place that are so good and so well practiced that as soon as actual information came out, you would be confident that you could spin up a response and get things fixed in a very short period of time. That's my thought, right?
Yeah, sort of these things always being an emergency. And also, the question in my mind is like, what drives the rumor mill? Like, is it somebody just wanting to be, the street cred of being the first one to report on an issue? I mean, clearly someone got wind of something coming and then spun it up to be this big deal. I don't know, it's a game of telegraph, right? I don't know where this telegraph started. And maybe someone said, oh yeah, there's a CVE coming out from Camel, just heads up. And then the next person said, there's a serious CV coming from Camel. And then,
and then it was down the line.
Suddenly it's a 9.8 and everybody's freaking out.
Everybody kept embellishing. So at some point, clearly it got embellished. Because the stuff they reported, and then I saw things being reported that just turned out to be wrong, right? And so it's clearly that people were at some point embellishing or adding detail, whether or not they had the facts. And so things that ended up being reported in those first couple of days are claimed. We were getting things from customers like, I heard that this might be the exploit. It was like things that ended up not being related, right? So this is a problem with this for the industry. If you're part of this chain, you can break that chain too, right? I think that's one. I think a takeaway for me is you don't have to repeat the rumors or the hype. You verify before you just like false news anywhere else, right? Before you regurgitate it down the chain, try to validate like where is this coming from and what kind of information is there. because panic
Critical
doesn't really
thinking,
help.
due diligence,
Yeah.
Mhm.
do all
panic,
those things.
Panic doesn't really help.
No. Well, with the camels moving on, I want to
Yeah.
talk about Silk Typhoon a little bit, because this one was kind of confusing to me, because it looked like a resurgence of stuff that shouldn't be an issue in my mind.
Mm.
But I would love your takes on it, since it was multiple known things that APT 27 was exploiting again. So this was a little confusing, but I would love your input on it.
Well, from what I understand, a lot of it is simply just they're expanding their capabilities in terms of initial access, specifically targeting different parts and earlier parts of supply chains for their eventual targets, which I think is a pretty obvious strategy, but a pretty great one. I mean, I think we've all come to the realization that the sort of the front edge, if you will, of these supply chains are usually pretty well hardened if they're major corporations, have security teams, have good process protocols, etc. So even better, let's start attacking their suppliers.
Yeah, I mean,
they may not have as good security, right? So I'm not sure how they were doing it in the past. Did they use initial access brokers, or were they just maybe not targeting as deep into the supply chain as before? Maybe Megazone, but it seems like a reasonable strategy to me. But it does sort of just reinforce the fact that, we need to defend every single part of this. And we've done that for a long time.
True. I mean, and Grey Noise reported on it. Some of the CVEs that were exploited were like, this was a Log4j exploit. There was an Exchange proxy login exploit. And the Palo Alto exploit. I'm like, come on.
Well, that's the thing is and I actually, it's funny because I was visiting some relatives. I went to see my dad this weekend, and I met up with some of my cousins and stuff, and they're not in IT at all. So we kind of like, what do you do? How's your job? Kind of thing, right? And the thing I said is, there's always new information, but you can't stop paying attention to the old issues because old vulnerabilities never go away.
Yeah.
Because there's always somebody who hasn't patched. There's always somebody who spins up a system using an install disk from 10 years ago, whatever, right? There's always something. And this is an example, of these vulnerabilities are still effective because there are still people in the supply chain who have unpatched systems. I mean, we see this as a vendor. We have customers who are like running versions of software that have been out of support for years.
That's true. That's true.
And we can't, they do this fully, right? It's different reasons. You hear, oh yeah, we're not going to upgrade that box right now because we're going to be like replacing that whole infrastructure in the next couple of months. So, that's not worth the investment, right? Blah, 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 blah. 2 years later, that infrastructure is still in place. But now it hasn't been upgraded or patched.
I've been on the bad end of that issue before. Suddenly budget doesn't happen. You're like, how do I keep this running another year?
And I think we all have at points in our career. And that's the reality. And that's the problem is you're just finding chinks in the armor. And the thing is, the armor, it used to be, people think of their network as the perimeter of their network, right? It's like, I have a firewall, I have WAF, I have intrusion detection systems, I have all my defense in depth set up the hell and back. Well, now with all the move to, Office 365, Salesforce, all these different SaaS systems, now your perimeter is not your network anymore. It's your network and all of the services you use. And all those services now form gateways into your information. Like you're technically your network of your customer information, of your contracts, of whatever it is, your supply chain. And I think that's the big thing we're seeing now. We're seeing that as a vendor. We're getting more pressure from our customer base of, we need F5 because now we could consider F5 part of our security infrastructure, right? Not just securing our network, but you have to be secure in all your stuff because if you're not, we're not.
Yeah, this is one of those, don't put your management network on the public internet if you don't have to. I did have to look at the date on those articles because, like, why are these coming up? This is literally talking about Log4j. Like, oh no, this is a current article. This is current.
We are still seeing exploits on this stuff. I mean, the thing is, this is what makes defense hard. The cost of probing for an old attack is basically zero. Once the probe has been created, once that initial work of setting up a bot or whatever to look for old vulnerabilities is done, keeping it running in today's networks is effectively zero. And so you can just keep all your old probes running and keep adding new probes.
We see this all the time in the Sensor Intel series set of articles on F5 Labs, f5.com/labs, hot plug for our site. You can see this over and over again. I mean, we see absolutely tons of scanning for both newer vulnerabilities. For example, ones from 2023, 2024, even 2025, but we also see ones from 2018. We also see ones from 2017, from 2020. It's just, as you exactly said, most of even just the recon or even the exploitation for a lot of these vulns is just, once you get your POC code and get that integrated into your scanner, it's free. So yeah.
Update your gold images, everybody, please. Stop it. Let's move on to an interesting one that's currently going on with governments requesting backdoors into end-to-end encryption for their own needs. We have Signal is threatening. So this is based off an opinion piece out of the Register. You have Apple caving to the UK, potentially.
Well,
potentially. And Signal's potentially pulling out of Sweden if Sweden wants an easy access into its encryption, which I don't think would ever happen. It's the entire point of that. But this is becoming an issue globally.
It is. I think one thing in particular to point out about the UK thing was that they issued what was essentially sort of a secret order.
Yeah.
That was to not only give access to iCloud, it was specifically a higher level of encryption that iCloud enables for some users. You can turn it on to get around that, but not only for UK citizens or people located in the UK, but for everybody across the planet.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. And because of that, like Apple, we only found out about it because somebody leaked. Now Apple, I think, has complied.
Well, no,
but they are challenging it in court.
Well, they didn't comply. Because they refused?
Okay.
They refused to put it. That's the thing. Apple didn't cave. Apple refused to put the backdoor in, but they said if we can't offer end-to-end encryption without a backdoor, we're not going to offer it at all.
They're going to pull it. Okay.
Right.
So they have turned off. They have completely turned off. So they basically made a big public deal out of it now, because now it's a political move for them, because by doing this, every Apple user now can go, Apple, this isn't our fault. Blame your government.
Yeah, they were at the precipice. They pulled back.
So Apple turned off they basically no longer offer within UK the end-to-end encryption that they were offering for the iCloud services, like the backup services, and basically said, we can't offer it to you without giving a secret backdoor. So we're just going to say, sorry, we can't offer this to you because we're not going to do that.
What are the backdoors being proposed? Are there specific algorithms, or are?
Well, it's not specific. But basically, the government's saying they're not mandating a technology, but they're mandating you, the service provider, need a way to decrypt this information. If we give you a warrant, you need to decrypt this for us.
Yeah.
Which
defeats a lot of the core independent encryption per user. Like,
that's the thing, is it's a lot of these service providers like Apple saying like and Signal's like we can't. It's between the end users. Like we can't decrypt any traffic. Apple was, we can't decrypt these backups. That's the user has the keys to do this. And the governments are saying, well, we want to be able to snoop on this. And it's the argument of security versus security. So they're saying that the security of needing to investigate, they often throw the emotional argument out there of, oh, think of the children, there's traffickers, or we need to be able to find all these traffickers, and also we need to be able to sniff on their traffic. We need to find terrorists, right? That's the other big one they throw out is if we won't be able to stop the terrorists if we can't sniff on all the traffic.
Which is interesting, because the really good ones aren't using any publicly available systems.
Well, that's you're basically you're looking at that sweet spot, or on that sweet spot, that overlap of
good ones.
people doing criminal activities who aren't smart enough to use open source encryption systems that aren't backdoored. Because there are other ways you could do. And one of the things people are giving advice to people who lost the Apple ability to do encrypted backups is there is software you can do a local encryption and then upload the encrypted blob, and then Apple can't shit, and the government can't. The keys, there is no ED. It's encrypted locally. You back up your encrypted blob. So there are ways around this. There are also other open source implementations of chat protocols out there that are encrypted end-to-end. So there are other options. It's a higher technical barrier than the average user, and my real beef with this push is kind of like you said, you are injuring the majority, because 99.999% of these users aren't criminal. They're not doing anything that, albeit they're terrorists or whatever, but you are now weakening the security of everyone. Because even if Apple didn't pull out, once you put a backdoor, an extra way to decrypt something, however you do it, into a system, it is now less secure.
Do you think anybody's trying to do something similar to what the NSA did in 2014, with instead of trying to ask for a backdoor, they just kind of manipulated the algorithms proposed for random number generation? So no matter what cipher you use, they're like, we know your primes. We're just going to slide in that way.
I can't remember. I know the algorithm you're talking about, the one that got. I don't think so. A lot of it's too much. The algorithms themselves, a lot of the stuff is that got discovered because you could see the things. It's harder and harder for someone to try to pull that off because there's so many professionals who are outside of these government agencies looking at these algorithms. Mathematicians who understand this stuff way better than I do. So trying to play funny games, it was one thing when, the NSA had all your mathematical experts working on cryptography because it wasn't a big field, and they could set up the tables for DES and things. These days, most of these algorithms were proposed from industry, not from government. So it's harder. The funny thing is, you have governments on both sides, because it wasn't that long ago that the U.S., I think it was the FBI, was recommending people use strong end-to-end encryption to protect themselves online.
Yes, it was just a few months ago. It was just a few months ago when the big penetration of a whole bunch of systems happened, or telco systems specifically happened, and the FBI was coming out and saying everybody should be using an end-to-end encrypted chat program like Signal, instead of SMS, because we can't assume that SMS is protected anymore.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. And then on top of that, I would say that in a lot of ways, with cryptography becoming a much more open and public field, like you were saying, a public review of any algorithms that are going to get adopted, it's much easier to go to industry this way, or like the NSA did, back that Snowden was talking about, or even earlier, there was another person who was revealing this, where there was essentially just rooms at telcos that were just copying all the traffic, so that nobody knew about until somebody actually, whistle blew about it.
I saw Enemy of the State. I just assumed that had been happening.
I mean, I suppose, but it's I don't know what the answer is, except that I think this will probably drive a greater adoption of these sort of out-of-band encryption procedures to more users, and actually especially to criminals, perhaps. So I'm not sure if this is even just going to be self-defeating.
And I still consider
the original goal of trying to.
I still consider Signal kind of like not a startup, but more of a user-driven application. And thank you, Moxie Marlinspike, for keeping that going and just leaving the U.S. instead of having to deal with our policies. So just continue that way.
In the modern world, life online, encryption is basically required now, and it's. And this harkens back for me all the way back to the Clipper chip. I'm like, it's the government. That's dated myself there, right?
You did.
Some people out there just highly like, oh, that neuron hasn't fired in a while. But it's the same crap we've seen over and over again from different governments, and it seems like it takes a while for them all to come back to the realization of this is a bad idea. of creating backdoors and weakening protection systems that affect everyone to find that really small target that you're looking for, the legitimate investigation, doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's still other intelligence. This isn't the only avenue for intelligence, right?
No, it's not.
There's traffic analysis. You can also compromise end systems. If you're a nation state actor and you suspect someone is committing these things, just the old-fashioned black bag operations. I mean, we see that happening today.
Yeah. I mean, one black bag operation that I know of, the government had created a fake internet cafe.
Yeah.
They just watched people log in, and what they realized was somebody would log in, create an email draft, leave. A week later, somebody else would come in and read the draft and delete it. There was nothing ever sent. So governments have the resources to do a better job without requiring open doors into our data. With that, I'm going to switch over really quick just because it's new information where F5 Labs commented on the X distributed denial of service attack that Darkstorm is currently taking credit for. We were quoted, David Warburton, the head of F5 Labs, was quoted as talking about, well, it's distributed denial of service. You have the ability to use traffic from anywhere. Why would you sculpt that traffic, though, necessarily? Because you're limiting the effective potential of that DDoS attack. So I want to start with Malcolm really quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Details.
So yeah, on the deets, on Monday, March 10th, X, formerly known as Twitter, suffered a denial of service attack, and it was quite effective. Actually, they were you can even find one of those websites that tracks when big sites were down, and they were down for a significant period of time, kind of all over the world. Yeah, it was quite an effective attack.
I would have to use Twitter to know that.
So I can send you the link anyway. So we'll put a link in the show notes, maybe. I don't know if we can do that. At any rate, yeah. So what came out was Elon Musk saying that they had suffered a denial of service attack, and that the IP addresses involved were from the Ukraine. Now, I don't know anything about the modality of the attack. I don't know if it was a UDP-based attack or a layer 7 attack or what. But if it was according to our research anyways, 4 out of 5 denial of service attacks are based on UDP protocols. So various different kinds of UDP flooding.
It's easier.
It's very easy. And most importantly for this discussion, you can set the source IP address to be whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right? It actually has absolutely no relevance in the way that the attack or the connection works. So you can make it appear that your denial of service attack was coming from IP addresses associated with Disneyland. Literally you can put it anywhere in the world. So right there's a good reason to have some suspicion about any kind of geographical attribution or any other kind of attribution if it was indeed a UDP attack. If it was a layer 7 attack, that could be possible, but also then you're going to have to use only a small proportion, ostensibly, of the giant botnet you have that's all over the world.
Right.
And why would you do that?
That
would actually be super easy to block.
It's traffic costly at layer 7. Yeah, I mean, low-level UDP, I'm not stuck on waiting for anything or half opens, just blasting traffic.
Yeah, and we see that's why.
That's true. A half open would actually allow you to not have to care about the source address either. So there's plenty of ways to spoof these things.
Yeah.
So again, why would you bother? Now, the funny thing about it is that the third and final thing where I'm worried about any kind of geographical attribution, so we actually have a known threat actor who has an agenda, who has committed DDoS attacks before, who is known to be effective at this, claiming responsibility, and they're not in the Ukraine.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of enough to say about it, honestly. And that's more or less exactly what David said in this article, which I would recommend everybody go read because he did a great job. But,
yes, we will post the links to go read that. We can end it on that one. Very good article.
Yeah, and we see this all the time with actual other attacks. With why you say indications of or whatever. You always to couch things because people always want to make it look like it came from North Korea or it came from China or it came from Russia. Like even if it didn't, because it's like it makes it you misdirect, right? You want people to think your attack's coming from where it's not coming from.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. Yeah, I think what Malcolm covered it really is of how they concluded this is Ukrainian. You say we have a threat actor who's known to do these things, saying they did it, and they're not Ukrainian. And why? And it also doesn't make sense. Like, why would Ukraine be doing it? It doesn't. There's a lot of illogic here. Maybe it's the same people who found out the 150-year-olds collecting Social Security who figured this one out. I don't know.
Maybe they can do a Log4j hack. On that note, we're going to close out today. But before we close out, I want to allow Megazone to shout out a special little event that you're planning.
Yeah, we'll continue to plug this.
Please do.
Month or so. It's not actually. It's coming up pretty soon, isn't it? Or it's less than a month away. So VulnCon's coming up. In fact, last Saturday, the 15th, was the deadline for the cheaper registrations. It went up, I believe, was it $375? I think in person. Now I should know this. I'm one of the organizers, but it was like $300. Now it's $375. And for in-person attendance, registration was going really solid. So if you're thinking about it, I wouldn't delay too long. We do have a fire marshal cap on that facility, and we kind of expect to be hitting it. We hit it last year, and we have more capacity this year, but expect it to be a little larger from last year. Also in person, so in person is $375 now. There's also virtual attendance, through Zoom and Discord. For up to 100. So if you can't be there in person, if you can't come out the route, it's in Raleigh, North Carolina, then you can attend remotely. And nice. The content, the schedule the schedule is little tweaks happening, but it's pretty solid at this point. I mean, you can see really good look at what's going to be presented this year. Yeah. So if you were on the fence about going and you're not sure, you can check out the proposed schedule for the whole event. So yeah, look, this is really good. I'm looking forward to this. Last year was amazing. Some really good stuff, and I think there's going to be some good content this year too.
Yeah, I checked it out. You got a lot of good people supporting that event, so we'll stay tuned. I want to thank everybody for listening to us today while we ramble about all things security. Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Megazone, for your time, and we will see you next week. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out AppSec Now, a DevCentral podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and if so, please consider clicking like, subscribing, or even writing a review. Available on all major podcast platforms, as well as YouTube.